Hello, good morning. We're happy you've joined us. We are still rolling people in, I think, this morning, so we'll take it a little slow at first. Next slide, please. My name is Kathy Leibowitz, and I'm the outgoing chair of the RAC Communications Subcommittee. My 4 years are up. On behalf of the subcommittee, welcome to the February 2024 RAND meeting. Next. As we get started, a few notes. The meeting is being recorded. The presentation and slides will be posted online. This is a Zoom webinar. You are in watch mode and chat is disabled. Please use the Q&A function to submit your questions. We will do our best to answer them during the meeting. Live captioning is also available. We acknowledge that the university is located on the territory of the Anishinaabe people. We also acknowledge the sovereignty of tribal lands, and we reaffirm contemporary and ancestral Anishinaabeg ties to this land, as well as the profound contributions of Native Americans to the institution. Next. All right, on our agenda today, we have community kudos, feature presentations on the Malign Foreign Talent Recruitment Program Policy, the RAC Process Subcommittee, and data use agreements. We also have updates from our central offices and a couple of quick polls. Next. So, the following individuals and teams are recognized today in our community kudos: Darla Briggs, Sherry Brooks, Teresa Herrick, Kathy Howell, Karen Jean-Philippe, Delynn Latinen, Amy Lingle, Nancy Offner, Lauren Orlman, Darlene Poisson, Chris Shingledecker, Allison Snow, Ann Thompson, Lauren Tingwall, the LSA Research Office, the Navigate team, and the RAC Training Committee. I want to add my own shout out to the RAC Communications Committee. Please join me in applauding work well done. If you want more details on what those shout outs and kudos were about, please check for a link in the chat. Next, please. Okay, so our first poll is about team communication platforms. We're interested in learning about which platforms you and your team use on a regular basis, and please select all that apply. We're going to give you a few moments to respond. Okay, I think we're close to being done. Thank you very much for that information. That's going to help us as we move forward as a committee. Next. So I'm delighted to introduce today's MCs, Heather Kraus and Ann Thompson. We'll start with Heather. Heather serves as the Director for Research Administration within LSA Finance, bringing over 21 years of research experience to the role. Prior to her tenure at Michigan, Heather was the Director of Financial Research Administration at the University of Akron. Heather's RA journey began here at U of M in sponsored programs, where she discovered her passion for the field. In 2013, Heather achieved her CRA, marking a significant milestone in her career. She is dedicated to advancing the profession and became deeply involved with SRAI starting in 2012. Since then, she's been an enthusiastic contributor, assuming various roles, including co-chair for the 2024 annual meeting in Chicago later this year. We'll put the plug in now, sign up. In 2021, she was the recipient of the SRAI Hartford Nicholson Award, established to recognize leadership and contributions to the society. Next. Next slide. Oh, thank you. Outside of work, Heather finds joy in spending quality time with her family and exploring new destinations, particularly trips to the beach and Disney. As you can see, the happiest place on earth, both of them. Heather cherishes her 4 grandchildren and 5 children, relishing in family bonds and the adventures they share together. She also enjoys baking and cake decorating. Next. And now a bit about Ann Thompson. Ann is the Director of Research Compliance and LSA. She joined U of M in 2012 and currently serves as the chair of the RAC Process Subcommittee. Ann is a lifelong Michigan resident. She received her JD from Wayne State University, and she started her career in international tax at PricewaterhouseCoopers, and then taught business law and political science at Schoolcraft College part-time. Once Ann decided to enter the foray of research administration, she's never looked back. She loves the constant opportunity to learn and that you get to use a broad array of knowledge across university and sponsor policies, systems, and processes to support faculty research. Next. Ann loves to travel with her 3 kids and enjoys hiking, skiing, and reading. Last year, she was able to visit her daughter who was studying abroad in France and go hiking in Colorado. Now over to Heather and Ann.
Hi, good morning, everybody, and thank you, Kathy, for that great introduction. And thank you, everyone, for having us today as your guest MCs. Ann and I are very honored to be here today. As we were talking through exactly what we wanted to bring to you today, we thought about warmer weather around the corner. So the thoughts of spring cleaning kind of came to mind. And I know when we think about spring cleaning, we typically think about our household, but I think there's a lot of wonderful things you can do as a research administrator in regards to spring cleaning within your job. So if we could go to the next slide. This cute little guy here, that's actually Punxsutawney Phil, for those of you that might not know. And Punxsutawney Phil is a groundhog who predicts if we're going to have an early spring. And you may or may not have heard that Punxsutawney Phil actually did not see his shadow this year. Therefore, we're going to have an early spring. We might not want to hold our breath because Phil here only has about a 39% accuracy rate. And this is the first time actually since 2020 that he has predicted an early spring. In total, he has predicted 108 continued winters, and he has about 21 early springs as of 2024. But we will dream of warmer weather and just kind of go with that thought. And so to get into the spring cleaning, there's a lot of things, as I mentioned, that you can do as a research administrator to feel better and have that clear mind to move forward in your job. And so Ann is going to join in here, and she's going to talk to you a little bit about the best ways that we can refresh and streamline processes, create some efficiencies and effectiveness in how we manage our research projects. Ann?
Thanks. As Heather said, spring cleaning doesn't just happen in the home. In your house, you may clean out or organize your drawers. In research administration, you may start by assessing your current administrative processes. Identify areas that are working well and those that could be improved. This could include grant application processes, budget management, process documentation, and sponsor checklists. Review your systems and processes to identify areas for improvement. Reflect on challenges encountered and seek feedback from colleagues to continuously refine your approach to research administration. Evaluating current processes for research administration involves assessing various aspects to ensure efficiency, effectiveness, compliance, and alignment with organizational goals. Here are a few steps you can think about as you evaluate and improve your research administration processes. First, map your current processes. Document the existing processes involved in research administration from start to finish. This may include identifying tasks, roles, decision points, and handoffs. Solicit feedback from stakeholders involved in the research administration process. This could be done through surveys, interviews, focus groups, or workshops to understand their perspectives, pain points, and suggestions for improvement. And It is important to base decisions on actual data and metrics. Don't just change a process because it feels inefficient. Collect data and metrics related to your processes, such as turnaround times, error rates, resource utilization, and compliance metrics. Analyze this data to identify areas of inefficiency or non-compliance, where there may be training needs or process improvements. Start with your top items to make the biggest impact. I'd also suggest that you benchmark these against best practices. Talk to your colleagues in other schools or units. Make it a point to have a lunch date to talk through how you're approaching things and how they are. See if there's things you can learn from them. Research best practices and standards for research administration. Compare your current processes against these benchmarks to identify areas for improvement and potential opportunities for innovation. It's also a good time to identify bottlenecks or redundancies, gaps in the research administration process that may impede efficiency or compliance. Look for opportunities to streamline workflows, automate repetitive tasks, or eliminate unnecessary steps. Additionally, this is a good time to review previously documented processes to make sure they are current and update for any acronym changes or policy changes. If you still have a document that references 7471's DRDA or FastLane, it may be time to update it. And with that, I would like to now introduce you to Lisa Nichols. Lisa has more than 25 years of experience working in federal, nonprofit, and academic research environments. She joined OVPR in January 2023 as its Executive Director of Research Security. Lisa oversees several important compliance functions, while playing a lead role in supporting U of M faculty with international research and other sponsored activities. Lisa received her PhD in neuroscience from Purdue University, and she previously served as the Senior Director of Sponsored Research Programs and Research Security at the University of Pennsylvania. Lisa will share more information about the statute and policy prohibiting participation on malign foreign talent recruitment programs. Thanks, Lisa.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, wonderful. All right, and I'm just looking to bring this up now. Okay, and can you see the presentation?
We sure can. Thanks.
Okay, fantastic. So thank you, Anne, and good morning. I appreciate this opportunity to be here today to talk about federal statute and University of Michigan policy prohibiting participation in malign foreign talent recruitment programs. And let's see. Apologies. My slide is not advancing. If I continue to have trouble, here we go. All right. And so I just wanted to start the presentation by noting University of Michigan and executive branch and congressional statements and language that reference the value of international research collaboration and the intention to not discriminate on the basis of race or national origin when implementing measures to protect U.S. research. And I capture a few of them here from federal agencies, from the White House, and also embedded within the CHIPS and Science Act. So the CHIPS and Science Act was signed into law on August 9th of 2022, and it requires federal research funding agencies to establish policies that require certification by senior key persons at proposal and annually for the duration of award that they're not party to a malign foreign talent recruitment program. And the CHIPS Act includes a definition of malign programs, and I'll walk through that a little later in this presentation. It also requires that senior and key personnel disclose their participation in foreign talent recruitment program contracts and agreements. And as you know, that is a current requirement. And also certification by the institution that these individuals have been made aware of this requirement. And so we'll talk about the measures that Michigan is putting in place to meet this requirement. So agencies are required to have these policies in place by August 9th of this year. So the act also directs the White House to provide guidance to federal agencies in implementing these prohibitions. And in June of 2023, the Department of Defense released this policy document, Countering Unwanted Foreign Influence in DoD-funded research at institutions of higher education. And in it, the DoD lays out for its program staff the process for assessing risks associated with international research collaborations, and also a risk matrix, with the hope that all the different components of the Department of Defense will, in a consistent way, assess proposals for risk and processes for mitigating these perceived risks. And so DoD will prohibit, as of August 9th of this year, any funding to institutions and individuals where an institution doesn't have in place a malign foreign talent recruitment program policy or prohibition, or an individual is participating in one of these malign foreign talent recruitment program policies. And so the university did roll out or begin the rollout of its policy and prohibition in early January of this year. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, but it includes the definition from the CHIPS and Science Act, the federal requirements that I'm discussing now, and also just a brief Michigan policy in relation. This is just an image of part of the DoD matrix, and you can see up in the top left-hand corner that these are prohibited factors, again, participation in these programs or the lack of an institutional policy. And so what is the University of Michigan policy? Just in accordance with federal requirements that Michigan does prohibit participation in these programs and require researchers to comply with all sponsor policies and certifications with respect to foreign talent recruitment programs as they evolve. And also, of course, that these disclosures are true, complete, and accurate. And I provide a link to this policy later in this presentation. So what is the definition of a malign foreign talent recruitment program? It involves monetary or in-kind support in exchange for any of the 9 characteristics that are listed on this slide and the following, and I'll just briefly go over them just for the sake of time. I know we have limited time this morning. But these include, for example, the unauthorized transfer of U.S. intellectual property, materials, or data products, establishing a lab or company or accepting a faculty position, or undertaking any employment with a foreign country or entity if the activities are in violation of standard terms and conditions of award. So, for example, if an individual is overcommitted or duplicating federal work. And that actually brings us to the next slide. So they're limited in their capacity to carry out their R&D award based on this other engagement, or they're engaging in work that could be overlapping or duplicative. Also, that they have to admit acknowledgement of their U.S. recipient institution, that they are required to not disclose to their federal agency funders or their employing institution their engagement in this program or employment activity, and that they have undisclosed conflicts of interest or commitment that are resulting in this non-disclosure, contrary to the standard terms and conditions of award. And so participants are, banned from, if they receive federal funding, from participating in these malign programs. And again, we've mentioned and we'll discuss in greater detail that there's an annual certification process that will take place. This is Part B of this CHIPS and Science Act definition. So Part A are these various malign characteristics, and Part B includes foreign countries of concern. So if it's a program that's sponsored by China, Russia, North Korea, or Iran, or on one of the lists that are referenced in Part 1, Part 2, and 3 here, which are derived from this, provided in this document that I mentioned and I linked to here, Countering Unwanted Foreign Influence in Department-Funded Research. So these lists were created by the Department of Defense in response to a requirement in the 2019 National Defense Authorization Act. And so you can find them in this document that I link here. So with respect to certification that an individual is not participating in one of these malign programs, we're going to see that in the new disclosure forms that were published in November of 2023, with the intent for them to be used federal-wide by agencies. This includes current and pending support and also the BioSketch. And so the forms include a certification that I've noted here. You know, the senior key person has to certify that in addition to the information being current, accurate, and complete, also that they're not a party to this malign foreign talent recruitment program. And so what does that mean for Michigan, and what do we have to implement, right, in order to implement these requirements? And so in having conversations between our group and compliance and ORSP and IT, you know, we've really established that because the certifications are occurring via disclosure forms, whether in Science CV or a proposal package or progress report, and because the malign definition is actually hyperlinked within those forms and certifications, no changes to the proposal management system appear to be necessary. As you know, too, we do have senior personnel disclosing on an annual basis and within 30 days of change in MInform regarding their outside activities and participation in foreign talent recruitment programs, as well as in their current pending support forms as applicable. And then with respect to certification by the institution that individuals are aware, we have both the University of Michigan policy and communications plan, which I'll talk about. And also as an additional precaution in that annual certification in MInform, there will be an additional statement within the attestations that, for example, an individual understands that they may not participate in these malign programs consistent with federal and University of Michigan policy. And so in terms of the communication plan, there were discussions early on with university leadership, the Association of Chinese Professors, the RAC Executive Committee, Research Associate Deans, and others in advance of the release of this policy. The policy itself is posted on the OVPR International Engagement website. And we have a website refresh that is coming up, hopefully near term. The revised content is currently under consideration and review, but it includes areas such as assessing and managing international collaboration, some of the federal-wide efforts that I've talked about with respect to research security and international engagement, agency-specific requirements, disclosure, international travel, and other resources. In addition, the policy was communicated via the VPR update in mid-January. We'll continue to have these discussions and to try to communicate out the policy. And then we remain available to answer any questions. I've listed one of our primary email addresses here. You can reach our team. And then in addition, also list my personal email here. If you have any questions, you can also reach me there. And one thing that I wanted to note before I end the presentation, but given time, we don't really have the opportunity to focus on, is that on February 14th, this month, about 2 weeks ago, the White House, in response to a requirement in the CHIPS Act, published a definition of foreign talent recruitment programs that we would anticipate federal agencies adopting. And so I list it here. And it's fairly broad, but it does also include what is not part of a foreign talent recruitment program. And so I include that here and on the next slide. So I just wanted to include this for your awareness, and that you can take an opportunity to review this, you know, after this presentation. And again, if you have any questions with respect to foreign talent recruitment programs or malign programs, we're happy to answer any questions that you have. So thank you. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, there was just one question, but it was already answered, and it was what determines whether an FTRP is malign or not. So you answered that during your presentation. That's all we have for now. Thanks, Lisa.
Okay. Sure, thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks for all the helpful information and letting us know how that's exactly going to affect all of us. We're going to jump back into spring cleaning from here. If we could go to the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about decluttering. I think that's probably what comes to mind when you think about spring cleaning and in context of your own home. You think about organizing. You walk into any store around this time of year, you see all the wonderful things of how you can organize your home. And there's so much you can do really in your job to declutter and organize. And I think we think automatically around physical space, but there's also so much we can do with our digital space. So I'm going to touch on those two key components here. The first is the digital space. I think that this is probably the piece that can get away from us the easiest and the quickest. You kind of file things away, you forget about it. It's not always right in front of your face. We don't always have those extra seconds to take the time to utilize all that wonderful organization we made of different folders. And so just want to encourage you to make sure that you are taking that time and to think about the organization of your files and folders when you're working with in your digital space. So one, make sure that you have logical folder structure, make sure it makes sense to you so that you can find it easily. And then on the back end, when you're searching for something, it makes sense to you because you've made it really descript. You've used descriptive names. And then make sure you're categorizing them. Logically think through what might make sense based on topics or projects that you have, again, so we can easily access them. And then get rid of anything that's unnecessary. It just clutters up the space. And in all honesty, I think we all know that it is very valuable and we only have so much of it. So if it's something you can recreate in the system or it's out of date, it's nothing we need for like a future audit or something like that, then go ahead and get rid of that and purge unnecessary files. And then also for digital space, email comes into play. I know personally for me, this is probably the biggest beast of them all. It's easy to read your email, to respond to it. For some reason, it seems really hard to then take it and file it away for later. And so what happens is your inbox grows and grows and grows, and it becomes out of control. So try to take the extra time, utilize folders, labels, what have you, to put those emails into so you can find them later. Prioritize emails, categorize them, and then get rid of things that you don't need. Again, if it's spam, for sure, get rid of it. If it's things that you don't need to refer to later, go ahead and get rid of it. Okay, next slide. So physical space. Again, I think this is what we mostly think about in context of spring cleaning. I think physical space has become a little bit more complex for us as research administrators. Probably majority of us have some sort of hybrid arrangement. And so space is not only your workspace at work, but that could also mean at your home. So you might have two spaces, you might just have one, but in either case, there's lots of opportunity to declutter and organize. I know personally, sitting down to a very cluttered space does not put me in the right frame of mind. I work a lot better if things are organized and kind of clean. And so just try to take that time to sort out and organize your space. And if there's something on your desk that you don't need, get rid of it. Don't let anything pile up and distract you. If you are a person who still utilizes paper and paper files, make sure that those are organized too. I think sometimes if you have a stack of papers on your desk, it can make you feel anxious, a little bit stressed. So put them in organized files with labels and into a filing cabinet so it's out of sight. And then try to make decluttering a habit. So I think spring cleaning at springtime is wonderful, but that's once a year. If you can make a habit of it and maybe do it weekly or monthly, just giving yourself an opportunity to have that clear mind, clean space, and just do a reset. So I'm going to turn it over to Anne next, but Anne is actually wearing two hats today. Not only is she one of your guest MCs, but she is also here to give you an update on RAC Process Subcommittee. Anne?
Thanks, Heather. I appreciate it. So yes, today I'm hoping to give an overview of some of the things that RAC Process does. Process is one of the 4 standing committees of the Research Administration Advisory Council. Specifically, the Process Committee aims to identify and promote changes in research administration processes to benefit research administration community. The committee also serves as a mechanism to provide feedback to central office initiatives impacting research administration. The process committee currently has 15 members, representing both large and small schools and colleges, as well as representation from central units, including sponsored programs, ORSP, and ITS. This broad representation helps to ensure that changes made to process will be reviewed and have input from a variety of perspectives before implementation. And I'd encourage you to reach out to anyone on the committee list, and they're happy to talk with you about certain things that you see happening or not happening. And if you have any suggestions, please reach out to us. I'm also hoping to give you a sense of the types of projects that we can have input into. So there are a lot of things that process can do, but there are also areas that we are not able to really impact the changes in a way because it's not a process that we would be working with. So I'll share some of the larger projects that you may or may not be familiar with, because hopefully you've seen the implementation, but maybe you didn't realize all the work that went into it behind the scenes. So next slide, please. Although award management has been integrated so thoroughly into our research administration lives now, at one point this was a new system and many hours of committee time, as well as numerous other units worked together to think through the logistics of adapting and integrating our current processes into the management system and made it the reality it is today. So hopefully you are all enjoying the benefits of the award management system now. Next slide. Additionally, a process subcommittee spearheaded the systemization of award change requests. This eliminated the paper form process to process post-award change requests. Hopefully, none of you still mourn the passing of the old PACRs. This required substantial work in mapping particular ACR types and routing processes to ensure a smooth rollout, in addition to the countless hours of behind-the-scenes coding from our ITS partners. So, have you ever wondered as a research administrator if you're responsible, accountable, or if you're serving as a supporting role, or if another unit should be informed as you approach a particular task? For instance, developing the budget, routing the path, or submitting progress reports? The roles and responsibilities documents provide guidance to unit administrators, and unit administrators in this instance is broadly construed to include RAs, department approval chain, college approval, PIs, ORSP, and other units to identify various roles and are broken into 6 phases. Proposal development, proposal review and approval, award negotiation and acceptance, management of awards, award closeout, and research ethics and compliance. Under the RACI method, these outline the various tasks and identify who is responsible, accountable, supporting, consulted, or informed. If you haven't yet, you may want to check them out on the ORSP website. In another means of removing a paper process and allowing for electronic approvals, the process committee championed the implementation of the electronic workflow for subrecipient invoice processing. We hope in this often hybrid work setting, the ability to approve sub-Ks electronically has streamlined some of your processes. Next slide. We are fortunate to have an incredibly thoughtful and proactive partners in our ITS e-research team. Shout out to Carolyn and Mike and all the others that are supporting behind the scenes. Process is often able to serve as a sounding board for updates and works to provide feedback from surveys and users to prioritize enhancements and improvements to ERPM. So we encourage you to keep the feedback coming. As I just mentioned, your feedback is important. In the RAP survey conducted in December 2022, Process received feedback on 64 items related to pre-award and 82 suggestions related to post-award. Our committee spent significant amount of time reviewing the suggestions, identifying themes, and have been prioritizing them based on an impact effort system. A few of the items that came out of the survey we have already been able to take action on, such as establishing a sponsor due date for the field for ORSP action requests, creating a document uploader field for when a project team logs submission to the sponsor, and providing the ability to clone paths even where an RA was not initially listed on the path. So Process will continue to serve this community and to offer feedback and support for the anticipated business process changes related to ORSP's realignment, as well as to continue to review and determine feasibility for suggested changes submitted through the survey and assist in updating current membership processes for RAC. So I encourage you to reach out to any of the RAC members on the committee, subcommittee for process, and share some of your thoughts about things that could be improved. Thank you. And now I will turn it back over to Heather for additional spring cleaning tips.
Thanks, Anne. And thank you to you and all the members of the RAC process subcommittee. I know that you guys work really hard and obviously you guys have been very busy. So thank you. So diving back into spring cleaning, let's go to the next slide. We thought it would be really helpful to talk about training needs. This would be a perfect time to look at what exact training do you need for yourself, or if maybe you're a supervisor or a manager, what training does your staff need? So the first tip that we have for you is conduct a gap analysis. Basically look at what are your current skill sets and where do you need to be? So what are the competencies that you're looking to gain? And then identify what gap exists and then find the training that can help you close that gap. I would strongly encourage you, if you're a supervisor or a manager, to also get the feedback of your staff. They're going to be able to tell you exactly what challenges that they're having. And this is a good way for them to feel a part of helping move forward and get the training that they need. So one thing I think with training is it can become very overwhelming, especially if there's a lot to be done. My tip for you here is to basically put all the training out and take a look at it to see what you need, but prioritize what's the most urgent and start there. And then just kind of work through it and come up with a plan and a goal to complete all the training. And one thing I wanted to point out is that we have wonderful resources here at the university. We have the Navigate program that's available to us. And so I encourage you all to utilize that for your training needs. I know that some schools and colleges like LSA, we have created our own training even for our staff. And so that's also other resources that you can utilize within your own schools and colleges. So don't feel that you have to be the one to create the training for yourself or for your staff. There's a lot of great resources out there. And then talking about training, there's a lot of opportunities even outside the university. So there's wonderful professional development opportunities. We have, as research administrators, wonderful organizations available to us, or research organizations. And we have SRAI, we have NACURA, we have NORDUP, and those are just a few. There's many out there. As you heard in the beginning, Kathy had mentioned that there is a local training or a meeting coming up for NACURA here in Ann Arbor. And so that is at the end of April, I believe. And so if you're interested in something local, that would be a wonderful opportunity. Also, SRAI has 2 different section meetings coming up here, and one is in Palm Springs and then one is in Hilton Head. NACURA, if you're looking for something a little bit more exotic, they have the Hawaii meeting for the FRA and the PRA. And then another shameless plug, as you had heard, I am the co-chair for the SRAI annual meeting coming up in Chicago in October. So it's pretty close. You could even drive. And that is going to be in October, and there'll be wonderful educational content there for you all. Another thing to keep in mind in regards to professional development is certification. So if you are looking to get your CRA or CFRA or CPRA, we have an amazing group here at the university, the Aim Higher group, and they have some wonderful training for you to help you as you're learning the body of knowledge that you need in order to test to get your certification. And then lastly, just want to mention the RAMP program. That's another wonderful opportunity here that we have at the university. And so if you're looking to expand your relationships that you have here within the university and are looking for a mentor, that would be a wonderful opportunity and a wonderful program for you to sign up for. So with that, up next, we have project representatives Michelle Quick and Gabrielle Hamoud, and they're from the Data Use Agreement team, and they're here to share with you about the Data Use Agreement process. Both Gabrielle and Michelle joined the DUA team in July of 2022 to work with Eric Ward, the Assisting Managing Project Rep, and have recently added Justin Donald to their team last fall. They will be providing some basic information about DUAs and sharing some tips for research administrators that will help facilitate the DUA process. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Heather. Hi, I'm Gabrielle. I'm here with my colleague, Michelle. And yeah, we're here to kind of discuss what a data use agreement is, the processes involved, why we have them. So what is a data use agreement? It's a contract between typically two entities where there is a transfer of data. Either one person is providing the data, the other one is receiving it, or it's a reciprocal nature where both parties are sharing some type of data between each other. And these agreements have terms and conditions that are typically governed by regulations or internal policies. They can be standalone agreements, or they can be conditions included in consortium agreements, subaward agreements. You'll see them sometimes in material transfers and so forth. So again, you can just have a simple data use agreement or something where data use terms are implemented in multiple contracts. So what is or when is a data use agreement needed? We can go to the next slide. Wonderful, thank you. So at our university, whenever we are sharing data, we will need a data use agreement, especially when we have any type of identifiable information that's involved, human regulated data, and even de-identified data. So anytime that you have a researcher who has data that is going out, you will be contacting OSP to contract a data use agreement. However, we don't always see data use agreements even when there is a transfer of data, and that typically happens when data is incoming from a different institution, and especially if it's not regulated by any laws like HIPAA, FERPA, GDPR. So you might see, or you might have project teams from different institutions who are planning on sharing data with your PI and don't have a data use agreement for you. And that's typically when we have a conversation if, there's nothing that is identifiable in nature, or there's no terms that need to be implemented into a contract like publication rights or intellectual property, then we typically can move forward without an agreement in place. But for the most part, most institutional policies will require one. You'll also see data use agreements in the form of repositories, which is really a storage space for researchers to deposit data, sets associated with their research. And this data can be linked to other data and shared. What's special about repositories is the purpose for the data isn't the same across the board. So researchers can request data from these repositories for different purposes, where you usually have a consortium, which is similar to a repository, except data is shared to only members who are contributing to that consortium. And there's usually bylaws in place that regulate the type of data that's coming in, what methods can be used for storage, and so forth. So those are a little bit more restrictive than a repository. And then you'll have multi-site projects where there is a common purpose with sharing data. And it's not the same as a repository where researchers are sharing data, receiving data for different project types. It's the same purpose for the same collective use. And then again, if a external entity doesn't require one for their data, then we can typically move forward. But most of the time, again, you'll probably need a data use agreement anytime there's a transfer. So why do you need a data use agreement? We kind of touched upon this in the previous slide, but there's regulations and laws in place. When it comes to data, there's not many federal laws that govern data transfers within the US, but you do have state laws like California that are a little bit more restrictive, especially when it comes to sharing human information. But if you are in, Michigan medicine, you'll know that HIPAA is going to govern a lot of the contracts that you have, especially when it comes to data or material transfer agreements. So HIPAA is one reason why we require DUAs, or why even institutions that are sharing their data require one. Then you have the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, which is FERPA. And again, that really mostly regulates student information that is being utilized. You have the General Data Protection Regulations for contracting with European countries, and this is GDPR. Their terms are a lot more strict and a lot more, a little bit more, I guess, they're more strict. So I would say if you have an entity who is sharing anything that's not de-identified in nature, so you're getting aggregated results, not aggregated results, you're getting limited data sets or full PHI, and you're again contracting with an entity that's in Europe, you're probably going to have GDPR terms. Those contracts are a lot more complex and take a little bit more time, but it's always going to require a data use agreement. And then again, going back to some states have privacy laws that require data use agreements because of storage mechanisms that are needed, rights and regulations for individuals whose data is being shared. And then we have also institutional policies. Again, that's to protect each institution's, IP or any types of rights that they have when it comes to publication. And so when you realize that you have a data use agreement or one that is needed, and you're going to contact OSP, you're going to route a UFA to us. Sometimes data use agreements are not always going to be unfunded. If your project team is receiving money, that'll be typically routed as a PAF. But for the most part, most of these data use agreements are unfunded in nature. And there's two UFA types that we typically see, which is outgoing and incoming. So outgoing means that the University of Michigan is sharing data with an external entity, where incoming means that we are receiving. However, like I mentioned previously, there's sometimes reciprocal data use agreements that take place, and that'll be characterized as an UFA type outgoing, just because, again, U of M is going to be sharing data with an external entity as well. And this is really important because within ERPM, there's certain functions, at least on our side, where we have to potentially send the UFA to different departments to review, especially if you are dealing with any type of patient medical records. Clients will have to go through and do a review to make sure that it's not a limited data set or full PHI that's being shared. And if it is, they'll work with the project teams to draft or negotiate these agreements. But again, anytime U of M is going to be sharing data, it's going to be an outgoing data use agreement, even if we are receiving something in return. And so what information does OSP need within these UFAs? If we can go to the next slide, please. So product title, to begin, is probably the most helpful when this is when asking for information, because a product title is pretty descriptive in what the data is being used for and what it's associated with. For example, if you are using human information, is there a HUME that's involved, or IRB approval? And typically those product titles are linked to the HUME where data is being pulled from. So I would say a proper project title for the UFA helps us in drafting the agreement, usually because these contracts will ask what the purpose is for, and product title, again, kind of describes the purpose in itself. And then the UFA will typically ask for target, agreement, execution date, and reason. Sometimes you can leave this blank if there isn't a deadline that has to be met. But if there is a specific target date because there's funding involved, or you have a student who is working on their dissertation, or there's some other type of triggering event, then within this box, we typically ask that you provide us with the date that the agreement is needed, and then the reasonings why, again, just so we can prioritize our queue appropriately when looking at these agreements. And then again, it'll ask for the external PI and external contact person. These are two different individuals. So when it's asking for the external PI, that is going to be the counterpart to your PI. And this is helpful because in some agreement types, it asks who the research PI is and who has access to the data that is being shared. So having this person's information is incredibly useful for us. And then the external contact person is going to be typically different than the external PI. This would be ORSP's counterpart, someone else who is going to be reviewing and negotiating these agreements with us. And this is really important too, because the person who is the external contact for these data use agreements will usually be the ones with signing authority, or will know who has the right to sign into these agreements. And it's usually not the PI who has that authority. So providing that information to us makes it incredibly useful to kind of streamline and execute these agreements a lot quicker if we know who we're going to be negotiating with. And then the UFA will ask for routing and processing instructions. Again, this is really helpful when noting about if there's other UFAs that are similar to the ones that we have, if a specific template needs to be used, or if we've worked with a entity in the past and we have terms that we've agreed on already, or if, for example, your PI or you as an RA have really good relationships with the product teams on the other end of the agreement and would like to be the one who is kind of handling those communications, we like to have those specific instructions in there. But again, it's not required, and you're not obligated to say anything within those boxes. But this information is typically really helpful for us when it just comes to processing these agreements in a more effective manner. Now moving on to really the meat of a data use agreement, right? It's the data description and project description. And your UFA, when you're filling this out, will ask you for this information. What we really ask is that you are as detailed as possible without giving the full protocol within these two boxes. What we like to know about data description is the type of data. Is it de-identified? Is it common rule regulated data? And you might not know that, but it would be that this is going to be research consented data versus coming from medical records. We're sharing a limited data set, or we're receiving a limited data set. We're receiving full PHI, we're not receiving full PHI. Again, those little hints will kind of let us know what agreement types we should be looking for, either from the external entity, or if we're drafting one, what type of agreement template we should use. So I would say that's probably going to be the most critical point in description for the data aspect of this. And then was data collected for a research study, including the Hume data variables that might be used. As much information as you can, again, just to give us an idea of what the contract should read, or if, again, it needs to go to compliance for review. That's really helpful. And then second would be product description. So how will the data be used? And again, this sometimes is going to be pulled from the Hume. So if it's not really provided within the project description, sometimes we'll go into our, the Hume and read through that entire document to see, again, what the purpose of the project is. But if you can summarize it within this box, it's incredibly helpful, letting us know if this is for analysis, if it's for publications, if it's part of a multi-site project, a longitudinal study. All of those small details help us better draft and better assess how to move forward with these contracts. And then Michelle's going to talk about some special circumstances within these UFAs.
Hello, everybody. I'm going to take a few minutes that we have left to talk about special circumstances and things that can hold up the data use agreements. And for many of these, there are related questions when you're filling out the UFA that will guide you on, giving us the right information. But there's a few that are just particular. So anytime we're sharing data with a for-profit company, and the clue may be there's an LLC in the name, or there's .com in the email address, we need to have that UFA reviewed by the Data and Biospecimen Release Committee. And the slide has a link to their website and a link to a checklist that will need to be completed and submitted. And it's really helpful if that can happen either simultaneously while you're submitting the UFA and ERPM to us, or even before you get to that. Also, if we're sharing PHI or a limited data set or data that's from a medical record, these UFAs will need to be sent to compliance for their review. And if it is determined that we are in fact sharing protected health information, then compliance will process that agreement and it will not come back to us. If they do look it over and they determine that we are shifting dates or doing something to make the data de-identified, it will come back to our team to process. This can hold up things a little bit because the review can take a little bit longer. And that's also why we ask you to really be thorough in your data description in the UFA, because if we have any doubts, or if the UFA is not consistently saying we are sharing de-identified data and we have any doubts, we'll send it out to compliance for their review. Okay, next slide. Another special circumstance is if there's going to be a fee for the data, and it will make a difference whether the data is outgoing or incoming. If we're paying a fee for the data, then procurement should be involved and they will handle the invoicing and the payment process apart from the negotiation of the agreement. It's just helpful for us to know if there is going to be a fee, if there's already determined a department's going to pay for it or a grant's going to pay for it, and we know procurement's involved. If we are receiving funds for data we are sharing, then that makes this a different type of record, and it would have to be returned to the project team and resubmitted as a PAF, because anytime funds are coming in, we will, it'll need to be done as a PAF and processed by someone else in ORSP. And then Gabrielle talked a little bit about the foreign agreements. These are always special circumstances. These agreements always require more review and more negotiation because we have to give special consideration to the foreign terms and conditions and how they're going to mesh with our regulations and internal policies. Next slide. And this is a question everybody wants to know: what can hold up the negotiation process? And some of these agreements do take a lot of time to get in place because we're going back and forth. This is why it is really important to give us the most complete information as possible. And I'm going to talk a little bit about things that are in our control and things that are out of our control. So starting with things that are in our control, again, getting the most complete and accurate information in the UFA can reduce the turnaround time and reduce the time we need to go back and forth with questions with the project team. Knowing ahead of time that you need to seek that clearance from the Data and Biospecimen Release Committee and getting the checklist in is also going to help, because we can't move forward negotiating the agreement until we have that approval. If we are sharing data, to make sure that the related HUME is attached to the UFA is also helpful. If we receive an UFA and we're sharing data and there's no HUME attached, we'll have to go back to the project team to ask for that. If it's not been reviewed yet, that will also hold us up from getting that out. We need a HUME that is reviewed and approved or exempt and in a state that allows us to share the data. Those that are outside of our control are any complex agreement terms. These usually happen on incoming agreements where there's intellectual property clauses, or we need to consult other departments for their consultations, like if there's export controls or some other unique things or terms in the agreement that will hold things up that's out of our control. If the agreement contains GDPR terms, this keeps coming up. And, thinking back to Lisa's presentation about international collaborations, these are happening more and more. And we are getting a lot of funding that also funds international collaborations. So these are going to come up more. These are countries in the European zone, and these always will take a higher level review and sometimes may even have to go to the Office of General Counsel. And if we have any terms or conditions in the agreement and they are not modifiable, then we will need to submit what's called an agreement acceptance request. And this will have to go to department review, maybe even higher level reviews to accept the terms and conditions in the agreement. All of those things can kind of hold up the process, but when Gabrielle and Justin and I are working on agreements, we try to keep you informed about where things are at and what's happening so that you'll know. And next slide talks about how you can communicate with us. We're always here to answer questions. The best way, when you have a question about a specific agreement, it's really helpful if you post a comment in the UFA and then make sure you ping us so that we get an email that there is a comment and we can respond to you that way, or you can email us if you have a question about a specific UFA that you've been waiting on. And it's always, if it's a complex situation or a complex project like multi-sites, or you need us to build a consortium agreement for you, we are happy to meet with you on Zoom. We can schedule that and help you that way as well. And then our last slide, please, gives some helpful resources. We have had, 15 minutes to talk to you about something that could take us hours. And so there are some links on the slide that will take you to previous presentations, one from Patrick, and then Gabrielle and I presented at Navigate, and it's a nice hour and a half long. There's Q&A that you can look at, and also links to our websites where you can get some more information as well. And otherwise, we are always available to help. And so I'm turning this back to Anne, I think.
Michelle and Gabrielle, it looks like we have two questions that came in through the Q&A. The first one, I believe, excuse me, that you answered in one of the slides, and that is, do you need a PAF when U of M is being paid for outgoing data?
Yes.
Okay. And then the second question is the review by the U of M Medical School Committee, only for med school units sharing data or for all of campus?
Gabrielle, do you know? You talking about the Biospecimen Release Committee?
I believe that's what the question pertains to, yes.
I feel like if we're in doubt, I would just check. I would complete the questionnaire.
Okay, and that's all we have for questions.
All right, thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Michelle and Gabrielle, for all that information. It was very helpful. So as our final spring cleaning tip, wanted to note that although spring may bring warmer weather and flowers, it also means that we're quickly approaching year end. As such, it is a great time to review your financial records related to research projects, both internal and external. Review budgets, expenses, reimbursements, and financial transactions. And although you're doing this all year round, this is a good time to just double check in case it needs to be transferred to a non-sponsored project and there's limitations on that funding. You can identify any discrepancies or irregularities and take any necessary corrective actions. It is also the time to plan for summer effort and appointments. Conduct any necessary budget forecasting, talk to your PIs to make sure that you're in alignment on what is happening for the summer and to ensure that there are funds for everyone anticipated to be working on the project for the summer.
Thanks, Anne. So that wraps up what we wanted to share with you today. We really, truly hope that you'll be able to take some nugget of information that we shared and apply it and do your spring cleaning. And hopefully by doing all of this, you can really optimize your processes, improve your organization, and just really ensure compliance and regulations and best practices.
And as a final note, you may notice that both Heather and I have chosen backgrounds which personify spring. With flowers, growth, and warmth, spring makes us also think of gratitude. Chris also shared some kudos already, but with that, we hope you will continue to grow in your research administration roles, and we want to thank you for all that you do to help your faculty, help each other, and to keep research running smoothly across U of M. So thank you.
Thank you.
And now I am going to turn it over to Andrea Anderson, Executive Director of Office and Research and Sponsored Projects, for an ORSP update.
Thanks, Anne. All right, so we have a very full agenda for you today for the ORSP update. We've got some agency updates coming up, as well as some news later on the home front. So let's dive right in. Next slide. So this is just my usual researcher highlight that I like to do each month to just kind of highlight the work that we are supporting across not only the institution but the nation. So in honor of February as American Heart Month and Black History Month, and in advance of International Women's Day, which this researcher is being highlighted. His work was featured in various medical publications. He is a medical illustrator who recognized the absence of women of color or people of color in medical illustration manuals. And to help disrupt biases and bridge gaps, began work to fix that issue. Next slide. So some NIH updates and reminders for folks. NIH recently held a grants policy update webinar that is linked in the slides. So when those go out later, you can go ahead and find that link there. We would encourage you to go ahead and check that out. That video is available now. NIH, we also want to kind of make folks aware in the research community here on campus that NIH has been strengthening their enforcement around closeout requirements. We've been seeing an uptick in an earlier process from NIH in sending out reminders and reiterating potential consequences to folks about not submitting their final reports on time. NIH will strictly enforce these requirements for on-time final reporting, and they will actually issue consequences to the entire institution, not just the investigator who is delinquent. So it is incredibly important that we meet these deadlines on each and every project, because NIH looks at those delinquencies at an institution level, and it can affect future funding decisions, not only for the investigator involved, but for all of the U of M campus. So it's critical that these reports be submitted on time. As a reminder, as a standard, all final reports are due within 120 days of the project end date for direct NIH awards, but for flow-through awards, where we are a subrecipient, that reporting period is often much shorter, because we have to allow time for the prime recipient to complete their reporting and incorporate what we've provided them into their report to NIH. So please make sure to check your award for the closeout terms to be sure that that is going in a timely fashion. There's also an update to the ERA Commons modules and screens to improve visual appearance in the coming months. Next slide. A couple more reminders from NIH. We've got some changes in how resubmission applications are done effective May 21st. Markup changes on the document itself are no longer submitted, or are no longer accepted. Any changes that are being made on a resubmission need to be outlined in the introduction document instead. So if there are marked up changes in that resubmission, there's a risk of rejection. So please don't make markups within the document after May 25th. There's also the annual salary cap increase has been released through a notice by NIH, which is also linked here. The new salary limitation for executive level 2 is $221,900, and that was effective January 1st. So please be sure you are using that in your budgeting for active awards if adequate funds are available, and if the salary increase is consistent with the existing salary or the institutional based salary for the relevant investigators, you can rebudget funds accordingly. Next slide. NIH also has a new single audit award term that is being included in notices of award December forward. It is being added in response to audit findings that OIG had for NIH. So NIH was audited and OIG had findings related to NIH's practices for reviewing annual audits for recipients of awards. And so they have added to their awards going out a term that they may be doing retrospective reviews of the most recent single audit reports. That is not unique to U of M, but it is something we are starting to see in our notices of award from NIH. So we want to call it out to you and explain why that is happening. So for your awareness, it is not specific to the institution. It is something that NIH is doing on a broad scale to shore up their audit findings from OIG. Next slide. NSF recently published their PAPG update, so you can go out on the web and find that now. It's linked here again in the slides. That will go into effect in May. There is a webinar coming up in a couple of weeks that we would encourage you to attend that will cover all of the updates that are happening in this new PAPG. But we did want to make a few key call outs to you about what is being released in these updates. If you go to that link that's provided in the slides, there's a lovely summary from NSF there that goes over all of the updates and changes in the PAPG, but these are the ones that we felt might be important to call out to you. So one of the highlights was that when proposals have a 5 p.m. deadline, the submitter's local time is tied to the organization, not to the location of the PI at time of submission. So if your PI is traveling and they're in a different time zone, their 5 p.m. deadline is about U of M's 5 p.m. clock, not about the location that they are in. So that is important to be aware of. BioSketches, they are implementing the common forms and removing page limitations related to BioSketches in this new PAPG. Next slide, please. And then there are several CHIPS and Science Act requirements. So it's very timely that Lisa was presenting on some of these changes coming out from the federal government. NSF is following suit and making changes to their PAPG to be in compliance with the CHIPS and Science Act requirements, including requirement or statements that individuals who are a party to malign foreign talent recruitment programs are not eligible to serve as key personnel or principal investigators on NSF proposals. They have modified their disclosure requirements to incorporate annual reporting related to other support. And they have addressed the CHIPS requirement for organizational certification regarding malign foreign talent recruitment programs. So they are now going to be requiring that the organization make a certification related to that. Next slide. So we have some big updates coming up with relation to ORSP, our structure, our organizational design, and some changes that are going on in our office. And we will get into those next. But first, we wanted to remind you that the Research Faculty and Research Staff Awards deadline for nominations is tomorrow. So please make sure to get those nominations in the next day. If you have someone that you feel is worthy of the award. Next slide. Okay, so ORSP realignment. This is very exciting for the Office of Research and Sponsored Projects. We are doing a restructure of our office to better align how our office functions with how work is done on a day-to-day basis so that we can grow at scale with the institution's research portfolio and better support the research community. We are going to modernize, enhance, and elevate our operations for a responsive, compliant, and best-in-class Office of Research and Sponsored Projects in an evolving research enterprise. So as we grow, our office has kind of had that same structure that it has had for many, many years, and we haven't modernized to keep up with how many other sponsored projects offices across the country are structured. And so we are taking a look at that now. And we're going to be making some significant changes in ORSP over the next number of months. Next slide. Our goal with this modernization is to streamline how work is done into separate teams within our office. Right now, as many of you know, we are structured so that one person is handling a project cradle to grave. They handle the proposal submission, they handle post-submission requests for documentation, just in time, et cetera, contract negotiation, award management, all the way through closeout. And what that results in for staff in our office is they are trying to prioritize very different work against each other. So a contract negotiation might have a different priority level than a proposal that is due today. And when you have folks prioritizing work that has very different deadline structures against each other, it tends to be that those hard deadlines win out and other work can get delayed. And so our goal with this restructure is to give our staff the ability to prioritize similar work using the same criteria. To create greater transparency and fewer handoffs in the processes that are happening in our office. And by doing this, we will have more timely responses, we will have more effective communications, and we'll have the ability to be more proactive, both internally and externally, because folks won't be doing such a wide breadth of work across the life cycle. They will have a more focused portfolio and a more focused set of skills to work on and enhance. We expect to see improved turnaround times with this. We are putting in place system changes and data tracking to be able to measure our performance and make proactive adjustments going forward to reduce unqualified delays. So what are unqualified delays? This means we know that with the work that we do, there are always delays that happen. It might be based on something that's happening on the sponsor end or something that's happening out in another central office where we're waiting on information or approvals. But delays that are happening within our office because of how our work is structured today will be reduced or eliminated with this restructure. Our goal is by restructuring how we work, we can reduce some of the things that are happening simply because our processes aren't efficient. Next slide. So defining our model for success, we have 6 pillars of success, 6 areas that we are looking at across our structure to measure whether or not this new structure for our office is successful. So we're looking at whether we have well-defined roles and responsibilities to limit handoffs and define accountability across the various teams so everyone knows what they are responsible and accountable for within the process across the life cycle, and what to expect from the other teams within ORSP or from outside of ORSP. We are also looking to create a clear path for growth and retention of our staff. We've experienced various periods of high turnover within ORSP. That's not inconsistent with the field in general right now, especially over the last several years. Research administration as a whole has experienced a lot of turnover and turmoil, and many of your offices across campus have probably experienced the same thing. But our goal is to try and combat some of that, that field-wide experience that we are having by creating career growth paths within ORSP within some distinct functional lines. We've worked with the campus UHR groups to define a new job series for our office and create market appropriate salary bands for the new positions that are being created. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And we're working to improve job satisfaction and culture through this new structure and create a scalable organization so that we can grow with the research portfolio here at U of M through this new structure in our office. We want to see customer service improvements, on average, service level expectations are being met across the new teams. that PIs are satisfied with the level of service, and that the folks in these teams have the right generalized knowledge related to the portfolio that they are managing. Right now, because folks are doing the entire life cycle, it can be hard to have the right knowledge on every single aspect throughout that life cycle. So with the shift that we're planning to make, we plan to kind of focus that down and give people a more manageable portfolio of knowledge. We are also focusing on training. We have a new training manager in ORSP that is really focused on developing new programs and structures for how we train staff, both internally and how we can help the research community understand changes that are happening in our office. We want the ability to onboard and quickly train new staff effectively. And right now, when you're expecting someone to know the entire life cycle, that is very difficult to do because that is a huge body of knowledge to learn. So with the new structure, we're making that a little bit more manageable so that staff can get on board and up to speed more quickly when they are hired. We want to increase efficiency. We want to streamline processes and reduce handoffs. As we've been looking at everything in our office, one of the things that we have seen is that there are a lot of handoffs back and forth across different teams, even within ORSP, that we would like to reduce. So really streamlining, once it hits one team, they manage their piece and then it moves on and it doesn't keep going back and forth from there. Providing mechanisms for effective delegation within the teams and eliminating unnecessary layers of management, but adding the structure that's needed so that the folks in leadership are leading and the folks in the officer positions are doing the day-to-day work, and have people that they can escalate to who aren't bogged down and also doing the day-to-day work. And then oversight and monitoring. So we need to balance our process control and the needs of the work, making sure that the work is getting through, but managing the compliance aspect. Having effective communication channels, both internal within our office and out to the research community as a whole. Having clear paths of escalation within our organizational structure. One of the things that we see now is folks really have a hard time figuring out who to go to when they need to escalate a problem within our office. And so we want to make that structure clear and transparent on out to the research community so that you know who to call when you need to escalate something. And like I said earlier, reducing unqualified delays and having the ability to measure our performance as we make these changes so that we can proactively adjust as needed. Next slide. So our transition plan moving forward into this new structure. Oops. Thanks. So there's going to be a period of adjustment. We're planning to roll this out over about 13 months. And this is going to be in a phased approach. So we have a very detailed, multifaceted project plan for how we are going to roll this out. But first, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what this structure will look like. So next slide. So we are going to have 4 new teams within our office to manage 3 lines of business, 3 distinct lines of business. We will have a team for each stage of the life cycle and then a team that is supporting across the life cycle. The pre-award team is going to manage proposal review all the way through award receipt. So that team will be handling proposal review and submission, approving, doing institutional sign-off on proposal submissions, handling any post-submission actions prior to receipt of an award. So just in time, post-submission documents, et cetera, will all be handled by the pre-award team. We'll then have a contracts and negotiations or a contracts and agreements team. This team will handle all contract negotiations, review of contractual awards, and acceptance or signature on awards within ORSP's signature authority. So that team is exclusively managing the negotiation and execution of agreements at time of award, or unfunded agreements. So any of the unfunded agreements like data use agreements, confidentiality agreements, any material transfers that would normally go through ORSP would all be handled within this contracts team. And then we'll have an award management team, and the award management team will handle everything from award receipt all the way through closeout of the award. So all of those award action requests that get processed through ORSP, award setup that gets processed through ORSP, closeouts, final reporting, all of that will be managed by the award management team. And to support all of this, we also will have a coordinator team. This coordinator team will be responsible for managing and triaging incoming work streams. So we want to have a central place within ORSP where work is received and then triaged out to the various teams within our office. Right now, oftentimes, a particular individual within our office is named as a contact point for external parties. And so when there's change in who's assigned to an agreement or assigned to an award, there's a lot of handoffs that have to happen. We would like to try and streamline that by leveraging more central contact points for external contacts, and then having triage happen within our office to make sure it gets to the right party within ORSP to eliminate a lot of the cumbersome handoffs that happen whenever workloads are changed based on someone leaving the department or someone going on parental leave. People have lives outside of work, and so we need our processes to better accommodate managing some of those things. So having a team that's going to be a central triage point, and then that team will also be responsible for initiating actions in ERPM that are being triaged out of email or other places where we might receive activity requests from external parties. So a lot of our award notices come in via email. That team would be responsible for getting those actions into the system so that they can be triaged to the right team within ORSP. And they're also going to be managing the data input and data management in ERPM and some of our other systems. So this team will be responsible for ensuring the data integrity that is going into our systems so that the reporting that comes out on the back end is accurate and trustworthy. So all of these business lines taken together are going to be in place to ensure and safeguard compliance for the institution. Next slide. So this slide gives you an idea. This is our roadmap to the realignment. So our timeline for doing all of these things. We are planning, as I said, a phased approach. The pre-award team will be launching first, and we actually have a soft launch of the pre-award team in place already right now. So today, right now, as we speak, we have a team of 4 folks that are assigned on that pre-award team managing a pre-award portfolio of work. Some of you may have seen them come through on paths that you're managing. Those folks they were hired several months ago, and they spent a couple of months in training and worked through the process of learning all of our pre-award procedures and are now live with their own portfolios of work. That team will slowly be expanded over the next several months, where we will then have a full pre-award team launch between June and August. So we are working right now to better define some of those business processes and system changes related to that pre-award team, with a plan for that team to be fully launched and in place in early FY25. We are also then simultaneously going to be working on forming and spinning up the award management and the contracts teams. And those are planned to go live later next fiscal year. But in the background, there's a lot of work being done to design system enhancements that need to go in place to ensure work is triaged to the right teams and can be managed in the correct way, and that we're collecting the data we need for all of those teams. The coordinator team is being phased in as we go through the process with each of these teams. We are adjusting some of the business processes and how they will feed in and out of the coordinator team as we go. And so they will be fully launched along with contracts and award management later in FY25. And meanwhile, we have a number of other processes that are, or changes that are going on in ORSP, one of which is the selection and adoption of a contract lifecycle management system. So this is a system that we will be putting in place to manage all of our contract negotiations and track data and create transparency on what's happening in any given contract negotiation at any given point during the contract negotiation. The contracts team will primarily be working in that system. And we are in the process of going through RFP selection for a final system right now. We've been working closely with ITS for the last year or so to select a new system to move into for this work. So we are hoping for that to be launched and live early in FY25, and then we will be working on integrations to ERPM so the systems can talk back and forth later in FY25. So that's a really exciting change for ORSP. Historically, we've kind of leveraged PAF and award for a variety of contract negotiation functions, but most of the work has been happening outside of the systems. This will move the work into a unified contract negotiation system designed for the management of contract negotiations and create transparency into what's going on at any stage of the agreement because the work is happening in a system where it is visible. So we're really excited to get that in place. Our team's been working hard to identify the best system for doing that work. And we are also working on some changes for the supporting teams within ORSP to develop training and facilitate training for all of these new teams as they roll out, as well as working with ITS on a number of system enhancements that are going to roll out in stages as we roll out each of these teams. And we're working with RAC Process on some of those changes as they impact the various groups across campus, including research administrators. So lots coming in the next year or so for ORSP, lots of changes coming, but really exciting changes that we think are going to create a big impact for campus and for our office. So this is kind of a big picture view of what that org chart would look like for our office. We are right now in recruitment for some of these positions. So reporting up to the executive director, that's me, would be the director of contracts, overseeing a number of teams that manage the different types of contracts. So we would still have a clinical trials team. We would have an UFA team, which encompasses DUAs as well as other types of unfunded agreements. And we would have a sponsored contracts team that oversees or manages all of the other types of agreements that are coming through our office. And then there would be a director of proposals and award management overseeing two teams. There would be an associate director for pre-award, overseeing a couple of managers who oversee teams who manage pre-award work. And then on the other side of the house, there would be an award management associate director overseeing two managers that oversee teams who manage awards in our office. So this is the non-financial post-award work that is done in ORSP. And then on the ERA side of the house, we have, which I will announce in a minute, a new associate director who is going to be overseeing the assistant director for sponsored projects coordination. And that team would manage, of course, the sponsored projects coordinators, and then our ERA systems manager, who works on all of the enhancements that happen closely with ITS to design and move forward with changes in ERPM. And then we have a business operations and administration side of the house. We have that in today's world. This position oversees the training project management, communications, business intelligence and analytics, and a lot of the HR and just business administration functions that go on in ORSP. So we can move on to the next slide. So some of the folks that are in these roles now, we would like to welcome to the team Andy Setkowiak, who is our new Director of Operations and Administration in ORSP, overseeing that business operations and administration side of the org chart you just saw. We also have Tanya Jackson, our new Associate Director for ERA Systems, who is going to be working closely with the ITS team, as well as working on all of the other systems that we manage and interact in in ORSP. So Tanya is leading the charge on that CLM implementation and overseeing that coordinator team that you saw on the org chart just a moment ago. And Leah Floreno is our new training manager. So she is kind of taking the helm of all of the training that's going to have to go on in our office as we restructure everything. So big jobs ahead for all of these folks, but we're really excited to have them on the team. And we have a number of new positions posted, most of which is around this new structure that you just saw. So we are in the process of recruiting. I believe these first 3 positions have already closed for applications, but we are in the process of interviews for these. The Director of Contracts, the Director of Proposals and Award Management, and the Project Senior Manager. And then we have a few positions that are still open for recruitment and application. Our Assistant Director for Operations and Administration, which is going to oversee things like procurement and day-to-day business operations and making sure people have the equipment that they need, as well as, HR matters, so hiring, et cetera, that go on in ORSP. And then a senior administrative position, administrative assistant position that would support both myself and the Director of Operations and Administration, and a manager for our pre-award team. So I mentioned earlier that we have 4 folks up and running doing the soft launch of the pre-award team. We are currently recruiting for a permanent manager position to oversee that team. Up until now, we've been kind of splitting those duties among folks that exist in ORSP, and we'd like to get that dedicated manager in place to oversee that team as we move forward to hire the rest of the leadership team for that pre-award side for the phase that we are currently in our realignment. Next slide. So this is just an overview of the job series that I mentioned earlier that is live in place. If you go out to Career Navigator now, you can see what the new job series in ORSP is. It gives you kind of a translation here on this chart to see what team on that org chart these positions line up to. So if you're curious kind of where some of these job titles land within those functional areas that we've been talking about so far, this gives you that translation point. Next slide. And any questions? That was a lot of information and I don't normally go this long. So do we have any questions?
We don't have any in the Q&A.
Great. Hopefully I covered it all, or maybe you all are just chewing on all of this information. So I'm going to hand this over to Debbie Talley for the sponsor programs update. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Andrea. And thank you to our MCs today, along with a big thank you to all of you for your work in helping us with our peak season. So when each year in the fall, we enter a peak season of reports due. Next slide, please. And we just want to say thank you. We are at 95% complete. So we had over 2,000 reports to get done by the end of the year, the calendar year. And we're very close. So if you have a few of those stragglers out there, please help us get those completed and into the sponsors. Andrea mentioned concerns from some of our sponsors, especially NIH, but many of them regarding timely reporting and submission of all of the final reports and request for funds. So let's not risk losing out on any of those funds. So please help us get those completed. Next slide. Along with the theme for the MCs today, we are doing spring cleaning as well. And if you can go to the next slide, this is when we work on those closeouts related to all the reports that we've submitted. So if you have a closeout that is old and needs to be wrapped up, please help us get that taken care of. My concern, and I know this is a concern for our reporting team, is that there may be charges sitting on an old project that need to be moved to the continuation, or in fact, they may need to go on another award altogether. No matter what the situation is, please take care of those as soon as you can. We want to make sure that the university receives all the funds that they're entitled to on the research that's being done. So help us get those cleaned up as we're working on our spring cleaning. Next slide, please. So just an update on our uniform guidance audit. It is going to be submitted any day now. So I think the rep letter is signed as of either the 28th or 29th of this month. So tomorrow or Thursday. This year, there were no findings related to research and development, primarily because that was not audited this year. The focus was on student financial aid, and there were a couple findings related to that, but the auditors worked with the student financial aid offices. So nothing for us to be concerned about from a research and development standpoint. Just as a note, though, we will have R&D on the next audit. So that'll happen after this fiscal year end. Next slide, please. This is an exciting note. Procurement, the bid threshold. I think I mentioned in the fall that procurement had gotten approval from the Board of Regents to increase our bid threshold up to $50,000. That aligns with the uniform guidance as well as the state requirements. And that should be going into effect any day now. They have been working with ITS to update processes. And so there should be an announcement coming out from procurement soon regarding the increase in the bid threshold. Next slide, please. This is also a reminder. So back in the summer, NIH updated their grants policy guidance related to foreign sub-awards. And effective in January of this year, we were required to add wording into every agreement that requires the foreign subrecipients to provide access to copies of all documentation. And that documentation is used that supports the research in the RPPR report that's due to the prime recipient no less than once a year. So we've amended all of those subcontracts, and we have one left, but we're very hopeful that that will be finalized in the next day or two. And the next thing that's going to be happening is that requirement that we have access to the documentation, and that the PI attests to that. So they will be working with contract administration. Contract administration will be notifying the PI that they need to ensure that they have access to the documentation. And so just as a reminder to all of you, if someone from contract administration reaches out to a PI related to this topic, it's that we're really looking for that confirmation that the PI does have access to the documentation. They don't need the documentation on site at the university, but they do need access to it. And if there's any questions related to that, please reach out to contract administration. Next slide. Okay, and my last slide is just to share, we have some new staff in sponsored programs. So we're excited to share with you our new staff who joined in January. So Richard, Kylie, and Nat all joined our reporting team, and they are now in the process of preparing financial reports. So you may have seen a financial report from one of them. They're all doing really well, and we're excited to have them on board. We also have some staff promotions. So Leslie Sanchez, Karen Schwartz were both promoted to reporting supervisors, and Mia Bernardi was promoted to the reporting operation manager. So we're excited to have our staff promoted and to have new staff on board. So with that, I think I am all set, and I'll turn it over to Chris.
All right, thanks, Debbie. So as spring cleaning usually happens with folks, and things never turn out how you initially plan them. So if you'll bear with us, we're going to be just a few minutes over, but I can assure you we will be done by noon today. So I just have some updates, and I wanted to share, and let me make sure that I have my esteemed colleagues here. So as you may know, as of February 1st, we welcomed Melissa Milligan to the RAC Metrics Subcommittee Chair role. And beginning March 1st, so at the end of this week, Becky Yeomans DeMoss from the medical school will take over as the RAC Communications Subcommittee Chair. So you'll probably notice that for this version, we enabled the reactions. So I see them all coming through. So you can give some thanks and congratulations to our new folks. I did also want to recognize Jennifer Huntington and Kathy Leibowitz. So thanks, Melissa and Becky. We're glad to have you on board, and we're looking forward to what we can accomplish with both of you. So thanks for joining us on video, and we're looking forward to it. All right, like I said, a huge thank you that we need to offer to Kathy Leibowitz, because this, as she mentioned at the outset, is going to be her final RAN meeting, as the RAC Communications Subcommittee Chair. So as you may or may not know, Kathy stepped into this role on March 1st, 2020. So that was less than 2 weeks before we all were sent home and the COVID-19 pandemic was underway. We had to quickly pivot and move to virtual RAN meetings. By my count, I believe this is our 12th meeting in this format, so we couldn't have done it without Kathy's leadership. She's also helped us establish our virtual networking sessions, which were meant to accommodate a lack of networking at the virtual RAN meetings. An expansion of the RA forum on Slack. So even if that's not maybe your primary mode of communicating with your team or getting information, Kathy has been instrumental in helping us to get content out there. I want to quickly turn to some of the RAC survey updates. We committed to having these updates for you at this meeting. As you saw from Anne's presentation, she talked about the RAC process, the ways the RAC process subcommittee has addressed those survey results. I'll talk about the other committees. So for RAC Communications, we have a work group, sort of a standing work group in that subcommittee, looking at reviewing ORSP web pages to make them more accessible, to make layout changes. As you can see from the graph here, the web pages are a really key piece of, or a key point, channel, if you will, that you all are receiving information. And we're also, like I said, working to amplify and boost important messages on the RA forum on Slack, just to make sure that there's some visibility for folks who may not have time to read newsletters or go out and search on websites. The RAC Metrics Subcommittee, if you may recall from our May 2023 RAN meeting, Jennifer Huntington shared information about the metrics resources that are available. And in the light of trying to accommodate training sessions that you can see here, which came up as a high percentage in terms of more information, we are currently looking to partner with RAC Training to offer more courses related to metrics. That's in the very early stages, so we don't have anything that we can share at this point. But Melissa Milligan, who I just introduced, is very committed to helping see how we can get more of that information out to all of you. RAC Training. So again, RAC Training presented at the October 23 RAN meeting. Melissa Lee and Nick Prier, the chair of our committee, presented and gave information about what is out there. We also took a poll at that meeting to explore new webinars, e-learning modules, or job aids that might be useful. And I can confidently say that we are working on those. So right now, specifically, we have a couple work groups that are looking at different voucher types. We have a group that's looking at how research administrators can successfully work with faculty. We also have an initiative where we're collecting onboarding information that various units might have in place. And we hope that we are then able to create a research administrator onboarding document. Again, these are in the early stages, so we don't have any confirmation on how these topics will be delivered. But again, I can assure you that they are being worked on. For the RAC DEI work group, we also had some survey results, that came through, excuse me. And in response to that survey, what we've done is really worked on more inclusive hiring practices that might be beneficial to all of you. So we do have a brief survey, which I was trying to get here and drop in the chat, so you have to bear with me. We have a brief survey that we would love to hear your responses to. This is an initiative that we're working on with the UHR talent acquisition team. So in case you don't know, they have a boot camp that they offer, which helps you to discover inclusive hiring strategies and ways to mitigate bias, learning about job marketplace realities, and really gaining tools and practices that can help you, including things like behavioral-based interviewing. And so what we have been working with UHR on is potentially bringing a version of the boot camp to research administrators, to those who are either in a hiring manager role or traditionally part of a hiring team. This is an anonymous survey, and we'll be sharing it after this meeting. It's really just used for planning purposes. We want to get a sense of how many folks might be willing to attend. There's more information in the survey, and as we communicate this, we'll give you more information about traditionally how that boot camp is structured. And we want to make sure that we're accommodating your needs as research administrators, given the different work environments that we have. And we would also encourage you to share that survey with other folks. The next update that I have is about the mReports upgrade project. So you may recall from previous communications that the look and feel of mReports was updated on January 18th of this year. There is a second phase, which I've already received some information about, but not conclusive information that I can share at this point. We're really working out what the timing looks like and how we can engage all of you in that. But this second phase will really demonstrate some proof of concept designs of the reports that are currently in mReports. And there are going to be opportunities for all of you to engage and provide feedback. Again, the exact timing is not known at this point. I'm working with IETS to really pin down what that might be. And we will use the mReports modernization work group that was established within RAC as sort of our main conduit for sharing that information. We would hope, as we saw from an initial sort of use case survey, I think we got just over 100 responses to that. So our intent is to really broaden that beyond just the work group, but use the work group as a way to sort of disseminate that information and those opportunities to provide feedback. So the last thing I wanted to share is a reminder to join us on Slack. We are continually posting announcements, job postings, and sharing resources and best practices. And also, I was remiss in mentioning that Kathy Leibowitz was instrumental in getting our 21 questions with an RA feature out on Slack and in the RAP and Rapid newsletters. There's a link here if you'd like to go view the forum, and you can also ask to sign up there as well. That's all that I have for the RAC update. And now I'm going to turn it back over. Oops, sorry, Kathy, I just stopped your video. I'm going to turn it back over to Kathy for some closing remarks.
Thanks, Chris. We do have one additional poll that we'd like you to take just a couple seconds and answer. We would like to know generally how you prefer or when you prefer the RAND meetings, whether it's morning, midday, afternoon, no preference. Select all that apply, please. And the second question on the poll, or the second part of the poll, is tell us how relevant today's meeting was. And and hopefully it was really relevant. I'm going to give everybody a few seconds here to let us know how you're doing and how we did. We do appreciate your feedback, and hopefully through the presentations, you saw that we on all of the RAC subcommittees are using that information and trying to make all of our lives a little better. Okay, I think that's it for the polls, I think. And so we can go to the next slide. So I want to extend all of the thanks and gratitude to our MCs, Heather and Ann, and all of the tips on spring cleaning. Now I have a longer to-do list. I also want to thank all of the presenters, the communications subcommittee for arranging and hosting the RAN, and to everyone for attending, because this is how we make community and stay strong. So as always, if you have ideas, suggestions, or other feedback, please let us know at ran-plans@umich.edu. That's RAN-plans@umich.edu. Our next RAN meeting will be in May. And I just want to leave you with a quote from APJ Abdul Kalam. Excellence is a continuous process and not an accident. Take care and be well.